listening to the Blue Raider Podcast, presented by Gold's Gym of Tennessee. Your all-access pass to everything Middle Tennessee sports, game recaps, player spotlights, and the latest from the heart of Blue Raider Nation. Now, here's your host, Jay Golden.
Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast. We are on the road once again. The football team is going to Reno, Nevada to face the Wolfpack after a disappointing loss on the road at Wisconsin. However, some bright spots to pull out from that one. And we'll be joined today by sports editor of MTSU Sidelines, Brett Walker, to devolve everything that happened up there at Camp Randall. Before we do that, let's thank our sponsor. Before we get into the episode, I need to thank our sponsor. Gold's Gym has been the mecca of fitness since 1965, and to celebrate their 60-year anniversary right now, you can get a month-to-month membership for just $19.65 bi-weekly. That's no commitment, full access to all 16 Gold's Gym Tennessee locations, and top-tier equipment to help you level up your fitness no matter your sport. But here's the deal. This offer is only available online, and it ends when the summer does, so don't wait. Go to goldsgym.com and lock it in today. Gold's Gym Tennessee. Train like a legend, no strings attached. Now, let's get back to the episode. Joining us now on the Blue Raider Podcast, once again, sports editor at MTSU Sidelines, Brett Walker. Brett, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jake. It's a pleasure to be on as always, and glad to be back here in my house after a 20-hour round trip to Wisconsin this past weekend.
Yes, I was going to dive into that a little bit, the logistics there. I know you MTSU Sidelines, the school paper there, took a few of you up there to Wisconsin. Tell me a little bit about Camp Randall, your experience, and then, of course, collectively the results of that Saturday matchup.
Yeah, so we headed out on Friday morning about 7 in the morning, much to the chagrin of my poor parents who were worried to death, but we made it all the way up there. I crossed, I think, more states in one day than I ever have for the total of my life. So we went through Kentucky, Indiana, which just goes on forever, as you know, and then Illinois, past Chicago. We made it up there. Our photographer that went with us, Caitlin Hajic, she's from the area, so thankfully we were blessed with a place to stay. So it made it feasible for us. But it was a great trip. Went up there. Got to the stadium about 3 hours before we were actually able to go down to the field. It's not quite, and I know the Big Ten fans are going to get all over me for this. It's not quite the atmosphere of like maybe an Ole Miss last year, but until, of course, the end of the third quarter when they do the jump around. And I know we were sitting in the press box, and you start shaking a little bit. The building, they say it's safe. They say it's good. It comes up on the Richter scale, but I don't know. There's a little bit of a bit there where you feel like that the building is going to be unstable, but cups are shaking. You can't hold your phone straight, but it was really just a great experience despite the result. And, I know you watched it. They played well early on, and given what we had the week before, it was really just a phenomenal to see how the team responded early. And it makes you feel better going into next week and the weeks coming after that early performance they had. Obviously didn't end how they wanted, but I think there were some scared Badger fans very briefly. I know they booed them off the field right before halftime. So good first half performance for the Blue Raiders on Saturday.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to look back and feel like on the scoreboard 42-10 think, oh, this team looked better. But I think collectively you should have that opinion that despite the score and it was a larger margin and Wisconsin still covered late, they did look better, specifically on the offensive side, and really talk about the first 30 minutes. And it's funny, like I had gone on to Locked On Badgers this last week, and he had asked me, do you think the defense could hold up for 60 minutes? And I said, honestly, probably not because of the depth. And we saw that come to fruition in that second half against Wisconsin. For 30 minutes, it looked like a really good, sound football team, a team that probably could have beat Austin Peay. And then that second half, we just see the offense just go stale, if you will, kind of reverted back to what we saw against Austin Peay. They're not able to move the ball, not able to get those first downs. And then the defense, much like they were victim to in week one, were just on the field for far too long. Obviously, you get in situations where your back's against the wall, and Wisconsin still not necessarily the best offensive line by Big Ten standards, but they're still leaning on you heavy. They're able to run the football pretty much at will. And to to Wisconsin's credit, Danny O'Neal had a relatively good game. Only 4 incomplete passes. He threw the 1 interception, but 3 touchdowns for him. I feel like Wisconsin feels like they might have made a mistake with their starting quarterback. Danny O'Neal looked the part. I don't know that Wisconsin's going to be very competitive in the Big Ten, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about MTSU and how we looked. And I think, and you kind of sounds like you share the same opinion with me, Brett. It feels like things are moving in a better direction. And I guess my question to you, as someone that sat in on that press conference with Mason yesterday, was, did we see the signs of getting better from week 1 to week 2, like we're always told is supposed to happen?
I think you really did, and it came I think the body language after the game really represented that. I mean, Coach Mason. So we rushed down to the presser as per usual. We had Najee Cox, DeMonte Smith, Wise Byard, and then of course Coach Mason. And there was just a better energy about him. And it's kind of funny to say that after a 32-point loss, but you could tell that their minds were in the right place. And he spoke at Monday's presser today. He spoke of that today. Their minds are in the right place despite the end result. They came in, they put on a good showing, and hopefully now that they're kind of, Austin P games in the rearview mirror, Big Ten opponent last week. Now they're kind of getting back to a more even playing field this week. You hopefully will start to see some results there, and I'm thinking that you will.
Let me pose a question to you. If the result of week 1 never happened, in an alternate universe, we played Wisconsin week 1, and that was the result that we had Saturday was the week 1 result. What is your opinion of MTSU? Do you reflect? Because I spend a lot of this time reflecting and comparing week 1 to week 2. But if you take Austin P out of the equation, do you feel like this year has a good opportunity to have a good year?
So I'm assuming by this you mean that the Wisconsin result is exactly the same, right?
Correct. And Austin P just never happened.
I think you're looking, I don't want to get, jump the shark here, but I think you are looking at a team that's competing for a top 3-4 spot in the conference, to be completely honest with you, just because, physically they matched Wisconsin early. I know the Badgers aren't, top of the Big Ten this season, and I don't think anyone expects them to be, but they met them in the hole. They had multiple TFLs in the first half. They were fast to the ball. They tracked well, and they looked like an all-around solid group for that first half. And they came out of halftime. I mentioned it earlier. Wisconsin booed off the field at half, booed back onto the field, and then MTSU drives early. They march, I think, inside the 30-yard or inside the plus 40, and 4th and 1, a give to Jaquel Middlebrook inside zone up the middle. And center falls down and play gets blown up, and it's just this big momentum swing, and that was the difference in the game, I think. And I've had classmates, professors, family members ask me, they were like, well, what do you think would have happened if they'd gotten that? And the truth is, if they would have converted that 4th down and gotten a touchdown, I don't know. I think you could get late into that game, and it maybe would have been an even bigger scare for Wisconsin than it already was. But obviously that didn't happen, but nevertheless, I think you have to be really impressed with what they came out with on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I agree. Because again, if I just remove, because you still hanging on to week, or at least I'm still hanging on to week 1. That was bad, yeah. But this is better. And again, if you just take that out, you're like, man, this team, I do feel great. I feel good about going to Nevada. I feel good about Marshall coming at home, who just lost to CUSA newcomer Missouri State this last week. So again, you still have this opportunity ahead of you with 2 really bad FBS schools coming, or you're going to Nevada, Marshall's coming here, but you still have an opportunity to get your feet underneath you before conference play, maybe get out of this at 2-2. And it, again, hindsight's 2020, but Austin P looked pretty darn good at Georgia this last week. So maybe we're not giving Austin P enough credit. I will not excuse losing to Austin P, but Austin P, they've entered the top 25 conversation now in FCS. That I believe they're 23rd in the media poll, and they're 24th in the coaches poll. So they're obviously getting some national recognition now. Chris Parsons, another guy that didn't light the scoreboard up like he did in Murfreesboro, but still a guy that, again, I still say this, he's going to be back at the Division I level this next week. But all that to say, I agree. I think the outcome this week, I feel a lot more confident. And the more I keep looking into this in next week's game, I can't help but feel, man, let's keep that momentum going. And as we're talking about that, I bring that up now. Let's go ahead and dive into that game. They're in Nevada. It's going to be an afternoon kickoff. It's a hard team to pin down. Nevada's had a very down program for the last couple of years. They're 1-1 right now. They have a narrow victory over Sacramento State, very reminiscent of what MTSU did with Tennessee Tech last year, where it took a last second pick six for them to win that game. And then they go on the road and face a top 10 team, get steamrolled for the most part. So I can't gauge what Nevada looks like right now on paper, but again, I know if from the look of both of those games, this program looks to be trending. Nevada hasn't been trending for a very long time. This is a game that I had circled, despite it being on the road. It's a game you still have to win. I think Nevada's not very good, but Brett, I'm interested to hear your take on this road matchup.
Yeah, Jake, I know whenever the schedule came out, and everybody does it every year. Regardless of how ridiculous it is in hindsight, everybody you go through, you write win loss, win loss, win loss, win loss. You go down for 12 weeks, and I think this one was, like you said, whenever it came out, I was like, this one's needs to be in the win column, just based off of what Nevada's put out in the last couple of years. I know it's kind of the pot calling the kettle black there a little bit. I know MTSU hasn't exactly been relevant here in a couple of years either, but just the way, like you said, the program's been trending. I think the big, honest to goodness, the big challenge for MTSU will be going to the West Coast. I know we found out at the presser today. But outside of the Honolulu Bowl, all those Hawaii trips, it is the farthest west that MTSU has ever traveled. So I think there's definitely a factor there. But I think if they get their feet under them early, I think this is one that MTSU really needs to come home with. I won't call it a must-win just because of the fact that, it's hard to call non-conference games a must-win. But if you're looking at the future in terms of becoming bowl eligible, I would say that it is a must-win for sure.
Yeah, if you're going to eclipse 6, this is definitely one of the games you've circled. And now, again, the Marshall game was probably one. I thought, again, going into the year, Marshall was a game that should be a for sure win because of all the turnover that they have experienced. Missouri State now winning definitely kind of secures it. Like, this is a home game. It's homecoming. You have an opportunity to win some fans back, maybe, if they're really watching. So I don't know, but this Nevada game, it's an interesting piece because you think as far as program trajectory, you were ahead of Nevada, but going that far west, as you mentioned, does add a little bit of a screwball that you're not used to. Hopefully making the trip to Wisconsin, you can kind of replicate some of those things that you did. And really to break down Nevada as far as what they are as a team. Again, it's hard to take everything with a grain of salt because they played both ends of the spectrum. I normally take that Sacramento State game more to heart because I think that's more of a comparable opponent than Penn State. But they're a very average group across the board in terms of offense, defense. However, a good sign for Blue Raider fans is they are one of the worst scoring offenses in Mountain West, and they are the worst scoring defense out of the Mountain West. But again, stop the phone, they played Penn State. That's why those numbers are so skewed. So scoring 20 against Sac State, again, more telling. I think that if you wanted to get your offense rolling, kind of replicate what you did in Madison, this is the week to do that because this team doesn't necessarily do anything very well on the defensive side, particularly the rush defense. They have a linebacker who is pretty darn good, got 4.5 tackles for loss. LaBarbera Reyes is his name, junior transfer from D2 Butte University. But anyways, they got a good, strong defense. And then my other problem is their quarterback play. Chuba Hubbard and Brock Purdy didn't have a baby. His name is Chuba Purdy. But he is as dual threat as they come in the backfield. Again, a style that is very reminiscent of Chris Parsons. Chuba Purdy was a top 6 dual threat quarterback out of high school, a 4-star commit to Florida State, played 2 years at Nebraska. Now he's in his second year at Nevada, what I would assume is his last year of college football, but he is the team's leading rusher at quarterback. And obviously he's put up a decent number of yards again against Sac State, good, Penn State, bad. So I don't know, but that scares me. And I'll really dive more into that about that side of the matchup. But before we do that, we've got to get to our keys of the game presented by Trevor Haggard at State Farm. And when life happens, you want someone in your corner who actually knows your name. And that's where Trevor Haggard State Farm comes in. Whether it's protecting your car, your home, or your family's future, Trevor and his team are right here in Murfreesboro ready to help. So don't just settle for some 1-800 number. Call a neighbor who cares and call Trevor Haggard State Farm today and let them help you protect what matters most. Trevor Haggard State Farm, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And Brett, tell me about this matchup. What are some keys to the game for you that MTSU has to perform well to win in Reno?
Well, the first one for me is, like you got it on the screen there, is start fast. I mean, you want to replicate, like you said earlier, you want to replicate what you did against Wisconsin and not get into an Austin Peay situation where you mentioned Purdy, mobile guy, kind of like Chris Parson. That gave MTSU trouble early. In that week 1 matchup, he got loose and he really stole the show from I think everyone could agree that Parson, was one of the more impressive parts of that game. So you don't want to let Purdy get hot and beat you on the ground there. I think MTSU, if they come out fast, like I hope that they will, I think they're going to have a good chance to take this home. I know last week, in one of the more funnier metaphors that I've heard Coach Mason use, he said that the team had a little bit, quote, of piss and vinegar about them. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I know that they came out mad against Wisconsin. I mean, they were frustrated with, the embarrassment, not to degrade Austin Peay at all. I think they're a good team at the FCS level, but they were embarrassed of what the product that they put out there, and it showed against Wisconsin early, even if the end result, didn't. So I think if you come out fast, then MTSU is going to be okay this weekend. I know you got to get the jet lag out of the way early and get moving quick to start this one. But I think they'll be okay if they can do that. And also the other key that I had was a strong front seven, and it's kind of surprising in a way, but it's not in another. I think MTSU's front seven is the strength of the team. Honestly, through 2 weeks. I mean, they came out against Austin Peay. They didn't get the sacks that they wanted. I know the defense as a whole forced a couple fumbles in that game. Ultimately, we're not able to recover those. But you look at that as one of the strengths of the team. Guys like DeMonte Smith, who we've got on the screen there, he had a really strong game against Wisconsin with a pick. I asked him today at the presser if that was shades of Kevin Byard or Charvarius Ford, but he declined to comment on that one. He said it was just him being him, and he was at the right place at the right time. But I think it's one of the strengths of the team, and I think you can really take over. If they can take over and keep Purdy in the pocket, I think they're going to have success this week against the Wolfpack.
Before I get into my keys, I mean, would you echo that statement that that if we have any fighting chance of getting to 6 wins this year, that front seven's got to stay healthy because, like you said, they have the real ability to keep us in ball games.
Absolutely. They've got to stay healthy for one, which so far out of all the injuries around that are kind of sprinkled through the secondary, some of the offensive line, it hasn't hit the defensive line yet, but that's something obviously out of your control. But it's if MTSU is going to sniff 6 wins, then that they need to stay healthy and continue to show up. And I think if they keep playing like they do, then they're going to make a real big difference when they get into the next couple of weeks and into conference play.
Well, you talk about the front seven there, and when I get to my keys of the game, my number one is contain the quarterback. I think the mobile quarterback in years past has given, I say years past, this is only the second year of Derek Mason and Brian Stewart's defense, but the mobile quarterback has given them fits in the past. Someone that's mobile, that can break, contain, get out, use their legs, and that's who Chubba Purdy is. He's going to be able to do that. Again, he leads the Wolfpack in rushing. For reasons that I don't consider Nevada's offensive line to be necessarily very weak. But when you have an opportunistic quarterback and you're forcing maybe a less than stellar secondary like we have right now, you break, contain, a scramble drill happens, and he finds somebody 15, 20 yards down the field. That scares me. And so I think if you're able to get to him early, and not let him get outside the tackles, they're not going to score. I don't think that this is an offense that's potent enough to really put up a lot of points. I mean, they put up 11 against Penn State, but again, I really point to the 13 that they put up against Sac State. And then keep Vadiato upright. I basically, the flip side, Vadiato running a lot more than I'm comfortable with against Austin Peay. Definitely got himself sacked 5 times against Wisconsin. I know the offensive line is improved, but I think Vadiato, I feel like sometimes he has a little bit of anxiety about making the right pass, because last year it was done nothing but running. This year he feels rushed at times, kind of making not necessarily bad reads, but an ill-timed pass, something that we are not accustomed to seeing in his entire career. I know I made this comment all last week. 65% career completion percentage. That number is nowhere near that mark this year. I can't help but think that if it's a timing thing with new wide receivers, I don't know what it is, but he relies heavily on one particular wide receiver who is my X factor for this week. But outside of that, it just doesn't feel like he has a rhythm, and I can't help but feel maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe he has a little bit of uneasiness. I don't know if it's a trust, confidence thing. I hate to put words in his mouth, but that's certainly how it feels. And hopefully if you can keep him upright, have some confidence, we can start to see kind of the old shades of Vadiato. But let's move on. I know I talked about the X factor there, much like Trevor Haggard and his team could be an X factor for you in protecting what matters most. Brett, tell me, who is going to be your X factor for this Saturday in Reno?
Well, Jake, I cheated a little bit. I know you reached out to me earlier today, and I just couldn't pick one, so I had to go with 2. I went with Ja'Kale Middlebrook and Ricky Hunt Jr., both of MTSU's running backs. They're the only running backs that have actually got to receive touches so far this year. And really just, I don't think it's so much them as I think it's more of a volume thing. And I know it's situationally. Against Austin Peay, the volume wasn't there because you spotted them 21 points and you were playing from behind. And Wisconsin, they've got that Big Ten front 7, so I think it was more of a struggle for the offensive line to hold up and run protection. So I think that played a key part of it. But I mean, you look at last week with the stats against Wisconsin. When your 2 lead backs have 46 net yards, that's not making your job easier on the quarterback, and you want to keep him upright, like you said, and your keys. And I think a lot of that too, it's not to put words in Nick's mouth like you said, but I don't know if it's maybe some PTSD from last year or what exactly it is, but it is seeming like he's rushing some throws at times and maybe making some ill-timed decisions so far this season. So I think if you can really get that running back committee to just solidify the offense behind him, then it's going to make his job much easier going forward.
We talked about this before we came on air, but it feels like the running back room really collectively has looked the part. Yeah. It's just that, and the numbers themselves don't show it. You 44 yards against Austin Peay, 33 against Wisconsin, but I don't have the sack adjusted numbers, but it looks like the yards per carry there, 3-4 yards per carry for both Hunt and Middlebrooks. It's just like you feel like you want to feed him. And I think that the number count this last week is that we did run the ball more than we passed the ball. So maybe we start to see a little bit. I always complain that we don't have an identity on offense, but I'd like to see the ball in their hands a lot more.
Yeah, I think that's definitely got to be one of the goals that Coach Reeder has on the offensive side of the ball. And he kind of said it in the offseason. And it's like, at times, he said that they want to be run heavy. At times, they want to air it out. And it's almost like you need to find a middle ground and find what works for you, what works best with the personnel that you have, and then build on it from there. But would certainly make everyone's life on that offensive side of the ball a lot easier if I think they were able to increase the volume of carries for the backs.
Well, my X factor this week, I thought long and hard about this, and I when I go back to Chuba Purdy, maybe it's someone on the defensive line. Maybe we need another DeMonte Smith game. Anthony Bynum is someone the coaching staff has really raved about. Someone who I thought, Bynum's been good. He had a bonehead personal foul this last week that gifted Wisconsin a first down on a 3rd and long. So I think those are guys that I'm thinking maybe we need strong games from them, but I can't help but go back to Najee Cox. He leads the team in receptions, leads the team in yards. Whoever wears the number 1 on this receiving side always seems to have a spectacular year. So obviously he was blessed with that number 1 responsibility. So I'm going to bless him with my X factor this week, and only because we have to have someone make a play. And he is that guy. He just seems to make the play when this team needs it the most on the offensive side. And so when you're talking about this game against Nevada, I don't expect it to be a high scoring game, but you need someone like that who can bust the game wide open. Obviously, you could point the finger and say Vadiato could be the X factor because he's got to make the throws. He's got to make all the throws. But Najee Cox just has this game-wrecking ability where he can get vertical downfield, make the 50-50 catch like we saw against Wisconsin in that first half. I think he's a special talent. And again, my apologies to him that I wasn't familiar with his game enough. I know that he was a vertical threat at Fresno City, but this guy has the ability to be what all of our star wide receivers of the past have been. And that's a big number receiver, high volume guy. And again, his length just adds to that level that he could take his game to. So Najee Cox, I'm calling on him this week to be another big presence on the offense. And again, having a guy like that takes the pressure off of Gamarian Carter's, off of the Miles Butlers, off the Cameron Lacey's. You've got to have his presence to make life easier for everybody. But his timing with Nick seems to be the best between any other wide receiver. So for that reason, Najee Cox is going to be my X factor. And again, thanks to Trevor Haggard of State Farm for sponsoring this portion of our episode. Brett, lastly, as we wind it down here, Vegas has this game at a 9.5 Nevada favorite early on in the week. I do anticipate that line moving, but score prediction wise, I have already kind of alluded to it. I think it's going to be low scoring because neither offenses have really proved themselves. How do you see this game going?
I think I have to agree with you. I mean, just the most points that either team has put up is 20. This is the 20 that Nevada put up against Sacramento State last week. So I think it's going to be a defensively controlled game. My gut tells me MTSU 17-10. But we will see. I think if they come out the gates, they get a jump early, then this can be one for the taking for the Blue Raiders. But we'll see what happens on Saturday.
I'll add to that about the low-scoring affair. Nevada, you talk about 20 points. 7 of them came on a defensive play.
Yep.
So I don't see this as a situation where something's got to give, right? You've got 2 bad offenses, potentially 2 good defenses. Something's got to give. I think the defenses prevail, but I do think one offense will get their feet underneath them at this juncture early in the week. I didn't have confidence last week in the offense. They sustained some good drives. You already talked about that first drive out of the second half. Outside of that, past that, though, I think their longest drive was 5 plays. So I worry about this script, if you will, that the offense is running. Are we that short of a leash in that second half that it stalls? So maybe the fast start is what they have to have for us to kind of open up the playbook a little bit more. I don't know. I'm not smart. I'm not going to pretend that I know football that well, but all I do know is Wisconsin offense, where you're averaging 3-4 yards a carry, 3-4 yards a pass, that moves the chains. That didn't happen against Austin Peay. We're throwing incomplete passes. We're not even trying to run the football. So some sort of continuity to generate drives. I love a good methodical 10, 12 play drive. As much as I want to hit Najee Cox from 50 yards down the field, I like the thought of handing it off to Jaquil and Ricky Hunt 5 times and you're in the red zone. So I think it's low scoring. I keep telling myself, this is the week, and I can't get myself there. I think Nevada, by virtue of it being a road game, and until this offense can prove to me that they can sustain a game from the kickoff to the clock hits 0 in the fourth quarter, I'm not going to buy it. I hate to be the pessimist, but until this offense can prove to me otherwise, I'm going to have to take Nevada. I think, again, hammer the under. I think it's 47.5. It's even lower than it was against Wisconsin, which is amazing to me that's the case. I would hammer the under. And I to cover 9.5, I think MTSU does that. But score wise, I'm with you. I'm thinking it's going to be 21-17, somewhere in that ballpark. Nevada comes out a victor, 4 points there. So I like the under. I just don't know that this offense can do it. But Brett, once again, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. Of course, being there in Wisconsin, giving us some firsthand insight. You do a lot of stuff midweek in preparation for all these football games. Tell me, what is kind of the release schedule for you? What are kind of some things we can look forward to this week and, of course, as the season goes on?
Yeah, Jake. So this week, I know for me personally, I should have a story shooting out in our newsletter on Wednesday. Got to chat with Balin Woodman, our kickoff specialist for MTSU. He got the chance to return home last week against Wisconsin. Had over 150 family members, friends, teachers in attendance. They were all painted up on the chest for him. So got to chat with his parents and talk to him. So having a little sidebar, if you will, of him getting to return home coming out on Wednesday. And then, of course, as always, Willie Failer, our lead sports reporter, is going to do the other sideline where they interview an opposing team's media member and kind of get the scoop on what Nevada's got in store for the Blue Raiders this week. So, and then, of course, always subscribe to our free newsletter. Weekly releases. I know the first week of classes we had more sends. We always do the Wednesday send, but we had a send every day of the week to bring MTSU students back to campus, whether it was sports specific or Scott Borchetta or what have you. MTSU Sidelines will have the campus covered. So I guess that's my plug for the day.
Well, good stuff from you as always, Brett. I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me on, Jake.
Well, thanks to you, the listener, for joining us once again this week. Stay tuned for our Friday Behind Enemy Lines episode like we always do. This week we'll be joined by Chris Murray. He's a sports writer for Nevada News, and so he will be giving us all the lowdown on the Wolfpack for that Friday at lunchtime episode. Thanks to Gold's Gym once again for sponsoring today's episode. Thanks to Trevor Haggard for sponsoring our Keys to the Game and X Factor. Follow us on our social medias at Blue Raider Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and of course, if you're listening on YouTube, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss one of our next episode uploads. And until next time, go Blue.